This video is sponsored by VG Almanac. Whether you're after reviews of the latest indie games or critiques of old school titles from aeons ago, VG Almanac has it all and more. You can expect an article a day, some of which are written by us two chaps.
Who doesn't like a good video game, huh? It's a wonderful escapist medium that allows losers like us on the internet to become hulking military muscle men with a passion for mowing down hordes of squishy, faceless enemies with relatively little effort and even less consideration of the consequences. But let's face it, there is a bit of an elephant in the room here.
Playing as generic, muscle-bound, American-born, John default characters does tend to lose its appeal pretty quickly. A relatively basic way in which some developers try to remedy this is simply by flipping the sex and proceeding as normal. But this doesn't always work well, does it, Battlefield 5? But anyway, I digress. Over the years, some canny developers decided to stir up the formula with arrays of quirky, balmy characters to choose from.
There are YouTube channels and sites out there that specialise in copy and paste examples of these crazy characters, most of which are pretty much common knowledge to most gamers these days. You know, things like Tofu from Resident Evil 2, Panda from the Tekken series, pretty much any playable character from the Katamari series, and many other go-to examples for WhatCulture to parrot back at you.
But what about games that let you play as a sentient sock puppet monster, or an oversized bath toy, or maybe multicoloured stickmen? Our list ranges from fighting game rosters and multiplayer-centric shooters to bizarre racing game avatars to race as, or race in.
So without further ado, I'm Deuterium the Sentient Mattress.
And I'm Jake the Voice Par.
And this is our list of 10 absurd playable characters.
Not the top 10, just 10 we liked.
So don't criticise us for ranking one higher than the other because the order's completely arbitrary. Also, I think Guru Larry can't see us, but I'm not taking any chances. Okay, this one's technically cheating since it's not one specific character, but hey, this is our list. We can do whatever the toss we like. During the late 90s and early noughties, Tony Hawk became very much a household name for gaming with his Pro Skater series, which in the UK was very briefly known as just skateboarding for some reason. With a variety of tricks and stunts to pull off, crazy combos to rack up in countless well-designed and increasingly bizarre locations, topped off with an ensemble cast of entirely pointless celebrity cameos and questionable inclusions, it was safe to say that there were a great many entries in this series. Our focus though is on Tony Hawk's Underground 2, released in 2004, which had a decidedly quirky cast of playable characters, including unexpected cameos from such figures as, let's see, Bigfoot, a Call of Duty soldier, and Shrek. You heard correct, Tony Hawk preempted one of the internet's greatest meme wellsprings. And then you have the Hand, probably one of the most balmy characters of the lot, a gigantic severed hand that skates with its fingers. You know, kind of like tech decks. Anyone remember them? Just Google it.
In 2004, the absolute madmen at Capcom delivered an unexpected twist to the classic zombie-shooting Resident Evil series, cooperative survival horror. In the spin-off title Resident Evil Outbreak, the classic formula from the series, scavenging supplies and solving puzzles while being chased by oodles of undead gits, was mixed in with a few suspenseful twists, like a virus gauge and a partner AI system, albeit one with the common sense of a lobotomized starfish. Its sequel, Resident Evil Outbreak File 2, was more or less a map pack, which also packed in some well-needed gameplay patches and better voice actors. You play as one of 8 unique characters, each with their own special abilities and exclusive items. When you complete certain objectives, you get points. You can use these points to spend on playable NPC characters. They act like the original cast of characters, but have unique stats that alter their health, speed, strength, and virus resistance. This is where the unlockable Mr. Colors step in. They're a squad of multicolored stickmen that you can buy for 100,000 points after completing everything in the first game, but they're available to buy for much cheaper in the sequel. Mr. Red is absolute rubbish since his hit points are so low you could probably just kill him by throwing stale popcorn in his face. Meanwhile, Mr. Green is insanely quick and very, very healthy, but he has a very poor resistance to the T-virus. From childhood doodles to zombie killers. That's quite a step up for a squad of plucky stickmen.
Alright, fair enough. Yu-Gi-Oh! Duel Links barely qualifies as a game by virtue of being a freemium title for mobile devices and PC based off a popular anime and children's card game, but nevertheless, it counts. Among everyone's favourite playable characters from the various Yu-Gi-Oh! Anime series that you can play as in Yu-Gi-Oh! Duel Links, the likes of Yugi Moto, Jaden Yuki, Yusei Fudo, and these guys who appeared in like a grand total of 4 episodes in Never Again, there exists one very weird playable character indeed. See, some of the characters you can duel as are released through special events, and if you were lucky enough to participate in a certain event in the Yu-Gi-Oh! GX area, you could scoop up the particularly frightening character of DUEL. Just look at it. I'm not sure what that's supposed to be, not even the internet seems to know what gender it's meant to be. The weirdness of its design does have a bit of an explanation though, in that it's also a playable card in the game. And yes, this means that Xi can play Xi herself, I reckon that ought to cover the panoply of gender identities Yubel may have, in-game, and there's even special animations and voice lines for such an occasion.
I'll show you who I am, the true me, Yubel!
Now I know that in the Yu-Gi-Oh! GX anime there is a plot point about dual monster spirits coming out of the cards, but this isn't actually explained in Duel Links at all, save for a brief passing mention in Yubel's character description. So new players to the game may be justified in wondering what the heck they've just unlocked. Then again, this is a Japanese anime game, so I guess that also kind of offers some degree of explanation.
One could dedicate an entire video to the oddball cast of the British-made first-person shooter TimeSplitters series. The franchise includes maps, weapons, and characters from all sorts of time zones. You can play as soldiers, robots, zombies, cowboys, and even a monkey. However, it was the third game, TimeSplitters Future Perfect, the best of the bunch, that introduced one of the most horrifying and bizarre characters of all. Hey kids, meet Mr. Socky, a sentient sock puppet monster with 2 thin arms, mittens for hands, and a pair of gigantic fingers for legs. Okay, now just imagine spotting this thing rushing at you with a flamethrower in its hands. Trust me, you'll never look at a pair of woolly socks the same way ever again.
The Sega Genesis, aka the Sega Mega Drive, and the Super Nintendo Entertainment System very much ruled the roost of the gaming industry in the early 90s, and each had a rather respectable lineup of games featuring various would-be mascots for the companies that created them. Back then, you could expect quite a few weird and wonderful mascot characters like Bubsy the Bobcat, the Noid, Alex Kidd, even Sonic the Hedgehog. But possibly the most morbid of the lot is Chuck D. Head. This weird walking corpse thing was the star of Vic Tokai's Decap Attack, which was actually a very heavily edited version of a Japanese exclusive title called Magical Hat Flying Turbo Adventure. Chuck is a mummy who bonks baddies with his face, which has been placed inside of his chest. It stretches out and smacks them, only to be pulled back by what I assume is his intestines. Meaty. Even weirder though is that here in the UK he was popular enough to get his own comic book series. Goes to show you, don't know what'll be a hit. I was thinking also of rounding this off with a head pun, but to be honest I think the actress has probably said them all to the bishop, so I'll just skip it.
Singletrack's Twisted Metal series was a big name in the 90s, more so in the United States. Blasting other races in their ice cream trucks or sports cars while battling around the globe was a whole lot of chaotic fun. The US exclusive third and fourth entries in the series were created by 989 Studios, who decided to insert heavy metal icon Rob Zombie as a playable character in game number 4. Slamming in the back of his Dragula, Mr. Zombie, as he's known in-game, makes for a safe choice for anyone looking for a set of wheels with steady speed, decent hit points, and a pretty handy special attack that shakes nearby enemies before going boom. Winners of the Twisted Metal tournament are granted one wish, should they live long enough to actually make it to the end. Mr. Zombie's wish is
to let this world hear the wails and war cries of a dead man's soul.
Or, in other words, share his music with the world by way of circa 1999 FMV cutscenes. And so, he gets exactly that.
Midway's boat racing classic Hydro Thunder was a splash hit when it hit the arcades. I'm sorry, I'll get back in the box. The home port for the Dreamcast also bagged itself some pretty sweet review scores, and an official sequel was released in 2010 by Vector Unit via Xbox Live, and Hydro Thunder Hurricane kept things very much true to the formula. A big selection of boats, races in ancient caverns or water parks, and some sneaky shortcuts hiding collectible goodies. Also added in this game was the Rubber Ducky team-based multiplayer mode, in which one player from both teams must race in a giant motorised rubber duck boat. The other racers must make sure their duck gets to the end first, either by shoving it across the finish line or by sabotaging the enemy racers. You'd be right in thinking that this sounds a bit silly, but the best part of all this? It's actually possible to use the rubber duck in single-player mode. But besides the novelty factor, there isn't really that much point in doing so. The game even goes so far as to point out that the duck excels in absolutely nothing. The winning races with it could be considered quite an achievement, or at the very least a huge embarrassment for everybody else.
Without a doubt, the most politically incorrect and potentially offensive playable character, Ash from the side-scroller beat-em-up Streets of Rage 3. Western players could only unlock him with cheats because he was deemed too offensive, even as a sub-boss. Okay, spoiler alert everyone. If you're easily offended or don't have a sense of humour, then why are you wasting your time on this stinking video anyway? Shouldn't you be going around complaining about politics on Twitter or something? Anyway, Ash is a stereotypical flamboyant gay man with butch facial hair and camp clothing. Instead of swinging punches and kicks, what Ash likes to do is smack around his foes and then thrust his backside into their faces. Most embarrassing of all, his special move features him smacking his bum, then pelvic thrusting so hard that everyone dies of gayness overload. Now, don't be fooled, because funnily enough, he's the strongest character in the entire game. I guess that kinda counterbalances the non-PC-ness, so ha! Take that, SJWs!
Again, admittedly, this one is sort of cheating, since it's not one specific character, but hey, do those of you who know what this is already really expect us to pick any one character from this game? Running with Sys's 2003 psychopathic cynic simulator Postal 2, try saying that 5 times really fast, is a game where the actual objectives are quite mundane. For instance, buying milk, getting your paycheck, and returning a book to the library. Along the trail, though, you will quite likely get sidetracked by such acts as, say, hitting protesters with spades, peeing on people, peeing on yourself, smoking unpleasant substances, attaching cats to rifles and shotguns in ways we're not sure YouTube will let us demonstrate without demonetizing the video faster than you can say support me on Patreon, and having a pertinent wisecrack for almost all of the above situations. So naturally, a game that lets you do all of these things had better have a wacky cast of characters to back them up, right? Running with Scissors thought so too, and when the multiplayer expansion Share the Pain came out not long after the main game did, they thought that they'd just go ahead and make every single character model in the game playable. So in Postal 2's multiplayer mode, you're liable to see any combination of civilians, cops, the Postal Dude himself, Osama bin Laden, Gary Coleman, a gimp with his backside on display, and even the Running with Scissors development team themselves having all sorts of psychopathic fun with each other. And that is pretty much the spirit of Postal 2. Utter carnage, utter nonsense. Not much more you can ask for.
ladies and gentlemen, we saved the best character for last. When we think of violent fighting games, 2 words: Mortal Kombat. Realistic visuals, wacky special moves, buckets of gore. It was every politician's worst nightmare. But if you thought that was violent, then check out the sorta kinda MK clone, Eternal Champions Challenge from the Dark Side. Released for the Sega CD, this title makes Midway's beloved creation look like a pillow fight with the Care Bears on Gumdrop Mountain, located in Australia. It also had a whole bunch of new characters, one of which is the Senator, a parody of video game-hating American politicians. His fighting style is called Dishonesty, and is full of deceitful special attacks like red tape, diplomatic immunity, a ban on violence, in other words, preventing opponents from fighting temporarily, and other quirky ideas. Plus, his stage is set in Washington, D.C., where a heavy metal version of Hail to the Chief blasts out in the background. It does not get more American than that. Also, as an editorial side note, check out his ending. It's pretty damn funny. What better way to make satirical political commentary than by literally dropping a politician into a fighting game and making him beat people to death because video games are bad?
And that, dear friends, was 10 absurd playable characters.
Thank you very much everyone who has checked out this video. Be sure to subscribe to this channel if you haven't.
And while you're at it, make sure to subscribe to mine too.
Stay tuned for more great content coming right up. So see you around, stay safe, and have a good one.
Ta-ta!